All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm gonna wait and see. I think give you a few minutes just for everyone to log in and see that we're up and running today. So I'm gonna give you a few minutes. But thanks for joining us today. We are here at the Nature Center, and by we, I mean me and the animals here. And we are working from home. All the Nature Center staff we're working from home as of right now, but we still have 70 education animals here at the Nature Center, so someone has to come in every day to take care of them. Oh, I see people are jumping on. Hello. All right, so somebody has to come in and take care of everyone. So while I was here today, I wanted to talk to you about some things going on here, and we'll be doing this every Friday so that you can tune in and get a little nature fix and hear more about wildlife going on. And all right, awesome, people are joining in. Can everyone hear me okay? Just checking. Make sure everyone can hear me okay. And I see y'all when you leave a message for me, so if y'all have questions, we're gonna have a little Q&A session at the end, so y'all can let me know if there's something that you want to see or questions that you have, and we'll address those. So all right, awesome. Everyone seems to be getting on here just fine. Great. All right, we're gonna get started. So today, April 10th, is Gopher Tortoise Day. So we're gonna celebrate Gopher Tortoise Day here at the Nature Center. And Gopher Tortoise Day was officially made a day by the Gopher Tortoise Council, and it is to celebrate a really cool animal, and that's the animal we're going to be talking about today. And we're very lucky and privileged here at the Nature Center to have a Gopher Tortoise, and I'm going to switch on over so that you can see her. And there she is. And so this is Big Mama, and she is our Gopher Tortoise, and she has come out of her little mock burrow because she really likes sweet potatoes. So I'm gonna talk about her because today is her day, and we're so excited to be able to have her here. And as you can see, I'm gonna point out, this is Big Mama, and Big Mama, you might notice that she's got one little foot here. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. She's got one little foot here that looks just fine, and one little foot here that looks a little different. And so she has an injury, and that's why we have her, because she is not able to be released into the wild. And it's because we'll talk about some of their adaptations, but she's not able to dig a burrow like on a regular Gopher Tortoise would. So that's why we have her here at the Nature Center. That's why we're allowed to keep her here at the Nature Center. So Big Mama is a tortoise, and so we're going to talk about what a tortoise is. A tortoise is a land animal, and so you can see that she is adapted for land. She has these little front feet, and these are made for digging. And if you look at her back feet, sorry Big Mama, gonna get up in your space. She has these big back feet with claws. She says, "Oh man, I'm just trying to eat. Why are you gonna bother me like this?" Let's see. Let's look around here. You gotta come out into the sun. Sorry about it. And so she's got these big claws for digging, and her feet are big and round, and they're elephant-like. That's how they're often described. And so just to compare, I want to show you a turtle that's actually made for the water. So I brought another little friend out just to show you a comparison. So this is Lucky. Lucky is a black knob sawback turtle, and if he will do us the pleasure of sticking out his feet, we can see that he has webbed feet. Come here, Lucky. Stick out a foot for me. And so his feet are webbed. He does have little claws, but they're not made for digging, really. And they're webbed so that he can swim. He's made to be in the water. He's made to swim. And so, let's see. Stick your little feet out. You can see a little part of a foot. I'll let you zoom in here. And so he's got these webbed feet for swimming, and so that makes him different than the tortoise, who does not have those webbed feet. All right, so some other things about tortoises. She is an herbivore. As you can see, she has this nice big vegetable plate in front of her, and she has some things that you might have in your kitchen right now. She has some, let's see, some green beans, and she has some sweet potatoes, which are her all-time favorite. Oh, I'm so sorry. Here, I'll put this right here. Don't get offended. But she also has some chickweed, so this is like a common weed that you could find in your backyard, but it's edible to gopher tortoises. And gopher tortoises are herbivores. They are veggie eaters. They're plant eaters, and so that makes up the majority of their diet. And they like to eat a lot of different plants. Out in the wild, they would eat a lot of different grasses. So her habitat here at the Nature Center is meant to replicate her natural habitat. So she would eat a lot of grasses. She might even eat some different little flowering plants. We've got some little things like that growing in here. She likes to eat dandelions. She likes to eat even prickly pear cactus. That's one of her favorite things. And I'm really sorry because I actually had some to feed her today and I forgot it at home. So I'm probably going to have a little video clip at some point of her eating prickly pear cactus just so that you can see that. Because they'll even eat stinging nettle and things like that. Things that you wouldn't think should be edible that they'll eat. So they make up, they eat a lot of different kinds of plants in the wild, and that's actually what makes them part of the ecosystem, an important part of the ecosystem, because they also eat a lot of fruits and things like that too. So they'll eat pawpaw fruits, they'll eat blackberries, they'll eat gopher apples, and when they eat those fruits, they eat the seeds, and the seeds pass through their body, and guess what? They poop them out. And as they do that, they're spreading seeds throughout the forest, and that is part of them doing their job and spreading seeds throughout the forest, and that's an important job that they have to do. So, some other cool things about gopher tortoises. They are long-lived animals. And see Big Mama here, and I'm going to pull her out. Oh, she says, no, please don't. Please don't. It's okay. Look, I have sweet potatoes for you. She's about 40 years old, somewhere around there, we think. And they are long-lived animals. They can live between 60 and 80 years and kept in the wild, and they can also live about 100 years estimated in captivity. So that's a long time. And it takes them between 10 to 20 years to reach maturity. So they're very slow growing. And she's about full grown. You know, she's about the maximum size that you would see in the wild. I've seen a few others that are a bit larger than her. But the females tend to be a little larger than the males. And I can show you a few different parts of her anatomy too. Come here, sweet girl. So we looked at her feet, and we see that the top of her shell here, it's been rubbed smooth. It's from all the time she's gone into a burrow, into a sandy burrow. It's kind of just made it real smooth. So the top of her shell is called the carapace. The bottom of her shell is called the plastron. And so it's two separate parts, and they're hinged. And this is part of their bone, so she can't come out of that shell. It's all part of her bone structure. It's all connected. And she's a cold-blooded animal. She can't make her own body heat. So they like to go for tortoises like to come out in the daytime when it's nice and sunny. They're most active during the warmer months because that's when they're gonna be out foraging for different types of plants and out sunning themselves. The rest of the time they're gonna live in their burrow, and they do spend a whole lot of time in their burrow. And their burrows can be up to 40 feet long. We didn't have that much room in here for her to dig her own burrow. So we had to make a little burrow for her. But if she were in the wild, and she can make her own burrow, it would be about 40 feet long. It could be up to 40 feet long, and it could be 10 to 20 feet deep under the ground. So that's pretty incredible. And they will make several burrows over the course of their lifespan. And their burrows are going to be the entrance to their burrow. So if this was her burrow, the entrance of a gopher tortoise burrow is going to be as wide as the tortoise is long. So this is how long she is. So this would be how wide her burrow is. So if you were to see a gopher tortoise burrow out in the wild, that's the kind of thing you could be able to tell how big that gopher tortoise was. And you saw on Facebook, we posted a picture of a gopher tortoise burrow in the wild so you could see what one looks like. So we got a few questions. What is a gopher apple? So that's a really cool little plant. It likes to be in the sandy soils. I've seen it on the beaches. So I've seen it down Gulf Shores area. It's just a little plant with little fruits hanging off of it, called the gopher apple. And it's called that because gopher tortoises like it so much. How much does she weigh? I'd have to go back and look, but they do weigh approximately, a full grown, their average weight is about 15 pounds. So she's heavy. She's hard for me to lift with one hand. She's just heavy and bulky. All right, so a few more things. So these guys, when they do reach maturity, they can lay between 4 to 7 eggs, and they typically lay their eggs in what's called the apron. So if I'm looking at my little fake burrow here, they would typically have lots of loose sand right here around the burrow where they would be excavating out of the burrow, and this would all be loose sand, and that's how I would know it's an active burrow. And this part is called the apron, and this part is typically nice and sunny, and this is where they would lay their eggs. But if you think about it, they don't typically, that's not a really good hiding place. So if you think about this nice exposed sandy spot, they'll dig down in it. And it'll be nice and warm for their eggs, but it's still pretty open and exposed. So only about 3 to 5% of their eggs survive. So it takes, some place that I read said that it can take 10 years before they can successfully have a full clutch. So what we call a group of eggs, we call a clutch of eggs, before they can have a successful clutch. So that's not so great. They're a very long-lived species. They're very slow, and they're very slow to reproduce, and they're very slow to be successful. And that works for them. The only problem is when humans start to interfere. And so we'll talk about that here in a minute. So another cool thing about gopher tortoises is that they're very social. So they typically live in something called aggregations. So they live close to other tortoises. So if you look, we've got a few different burrows set up. They wouldn't be this close together in the wild, but they would live in a close together to other gopher tortoises. And there's some studies that have been done that show that they like to go visit their neighbors, which that's just really cool to me. That they'll go out, and during the active time, so during the warmer parts of the year, they'll actually go visit their neighbors and say hello to them. And there's some studies that have shown that they recognize their neighbors and that they form cliques with their neighbors. So they form groups of other tortoises that they really like. And so sometimes they like some of their neighbors and don't like other neighbors of theirs. So that's just kind of funny to me, that they're so social like that. They like to be around other tortoises, and they like to interact with other tortoises. So she is going to town on her little veggie plate there. As you can see, she's really liking that chickweed too. And that's something that just grows in most people's yards. I just pulled that up right here around the nature center. So that's really cool. So as you can see, a lot centers around their burrow, and I talked about that. And the burrow is what makes them called an ecosystem engineer. And when you think about ecosystem engineers, a lot of people think about a beaver. So a beaver changes its habitat because it makes a dam and it floods an area with water. But the gopher tortoise is an ecosystem engineer because it makes these burrows everywhere. It makes these big tunnels. They also make little trails through the forest, and they change the landscape. And these burrows are not just important for the gopher tortoise, but they're important for other animals as well. So scientists have put video cameras down these little burrows, and they've seen what animals like to live in there. And sometimes the animals are in there with the gopher tortoise, or sometimes they're in old burrows that don't have a gopher tortoise in them. But they've counted 360 different kinds of animals that will live in a gopher tortoise burrow. And that includes birds, like the burrowing owl. That includes mammals, like possums and foxes and the Florida mouse, which is the gopher tortoise burrow is really important for the Florida mouse. It includes different types of invertebrates, so spiders and bugs and things. There's a dung beetle, like the gopher dung beetle, that lives in the gopher tortoise burrow and lives mainly on gopher tortoise poop. That's pretty cool. There is also, let's see, what other types of animals? Oh, other reptiles. So, like the eastern diamondback rattlesnake and the eastern indigo snake. The eastern indigo snake is only found where there's gopher tortoises because they rely on the gopher tortoise burrow. And then there's amphibians too, like frogs and toads and things like that. And there's a frog called the gopher frog, and it lives where there's gopher tortoise burrows. That's really cool. And they use these burrows for all sorts of things. They use them as a place to hide from predators. They use them to get out. Excuse me. Sorry, it's sandy in here. They use them to get out of the hot sun, to raise their young, or for some of the reptiles, they may want to spend the winter in there. It's a pretty constant climate down in those burrows. It stays the relatively same temperature and humidity, so it's a nice place for something like a reptile or an amphibian to live. So those are just some animals that will use it, and I bet if you were to look up some animals, you would find really surprising animals that will use a gopher tortoise burrow. It's crazy. So because they make these burrows and so many animals use them, they're called a keystone species. And so a keystone species is an animal that has a big impact on the environment around it. So even if there's not many gopher tortoises in an area, it still makes a huge impact because it impacts so many other animals. Just one gopher tortoise will make so many burrows over its life that's huge. So that's really cool. And that's another reason why this is a very important and very special animal. Now, they live in this really cool habitat, and I've talked to you, we've tried to make that habitat here. So we've got this nice sandy soil. They like to live in areas where it's deep sandy soil because they like to dig in it, right? And they need these grasses to grow. So for grasses to grow, they need sunlight, right? So if they need sunlight, they don't need trees that are spaced close together because they need this sun to be able to grow. You see how much sun's coming in here? Nice and sunny for the gopher tortoise, nice and sunny for the plants. So they like some trees, but they want the trees nice and spaced apart. That's where this little tree comes in. So this is a little baby longleaf pine. It's very small right now, but it can get a lot bigger. But it likes to live in a nice spaced out area. It really likes sandy soil, and it's adapted to fire. And that is the key part of this whole deal, is fire has to move across the ecosystem so that bushes and stuff like that can't grow and make it all crowded and dark. And also so that these grasses can grow. These grasses like fire. The pine tree can live with fire. This pine tree, it's super cool. It can actually live with fire. So these needles around the outside, they can burn, but it'll protect the middle part of it, so it'll still keep growing. So that's neat. So that's where you find these gopher tortoises. Hey, Big Mama, where are you going? She's bored of me. So fire, longleaf pine, grasses, gopher tortoise. Oh, I switched around. How did I do that? Hi, everyone. I bet you want to see the gopher tortoise, not me. Let's follow her over here. So this environment is so neat, and it all works together, and that's where she likes to live. Where do they live in the state? Good question. So they live mostly in the southern part of the state, so coastal plain areas. They also can be found in Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, and a little bit of South Carolina. And so in every state they are protected to some degree. So here in Alabama, most of their range is protected, is state protected. And then I like that. She said you were talking about the trees. I'm leaving. Yeah, I took the focus off of her. She's a little diva. But in part of their range here in Alabama, they're federally protected. So that means that, they're protected by the federal government. In most places, they're protected by state government. So it depends on their range, and it depends on how common they are in that part of their range. So they are considered threatened. So that's just a step below becoming endangered. And so they have a lot of threats to them. And so we talked about they're slow to grow. We talked about a lot of things can predate their young, their eggs, when they're in that apron part of the burrow. When they're little babies, a lot of things can eat them. Now, when they get to be this size, most of the things that can hurt them are people and people-related things. So, habitat destruction is a big thing. People, with their letting their dogs run loose. So, typically, when you see an injury like Big Mama's with her little foot, that's very commonly associated with a dog bite. We don't know for sure if that's what happened, but that's very common. Dogs also dig up their burrows and things like that. Not having fire in the ecosystem. Fire is so important that without fire, if you exclude fire, it changes the ecosystem. And if a forest becomes all dark and shady, then there's no place for the gopher tortoise, no grasses to grow, no food for it to eat, things like that. So habitat is very important. One of the number one causes of death for adult gopher tortoises are actually car strikes, though. So when these guys are crossing the road, she's a tortoise. Do you think she's really fast? Not really. She doesn't know she's not supposed to be in the road either. So car strikes are a big part of their decline too. So if you see a tortoise in the road and you can safely stop and have somebody move it out of the way, that's a very helpful thing to do. And always put a tortoise on the side of the road that it was headed towards, not the side it came from. Because let me tell you, tortoises are stubborn creatures, and she will not change her mind. She's going in that direction for a reason, so it's always best to do that. So those are some threats that are facing gopher tortoises. People, habitat loss, fragmentation, where habitat has been divided up by either roads or buildings or things like that. But what's interesting is a lot of gopher tortoise habitat, so 80% of gopher tortoise habitat is actually privately owned. So that means that people can have a big effect. people, landowners who have gopher tortoise habitat, they can do a lot for gopher tortoises. So they can create new habitat, and they can, make sure that the gopher tortoises that are on their property are taken care of. And, part of the Alabama Nature Center, we're part of the Alabama Wildlife Federation. Alabama Wildlife Federation has biologists who come out and do things like that, take a look at your property and to suggest how you can manage it for wildlife, like a gopher tortoise. So that's something you can do. If you're not a landowner, say you just have a yard and you live in an area where there's gopher tortoises, you can actually plant some plants like we've got here that a gopher tortoise would like. And you might have your friendly neighborhood gopher tortoise coming up into your yard to have some munching in your neighborhood, in your yard. So that's something you can do as well. So I'm going to see if anyone has any questions, and let's take a look at what she's doing here in her burrow. And ask away any questions. I answered some as they were coming through, but I want to know if you have any questions. I'll think of some things that I might not have told you. Did you get a little too warm in there? Look at those elephant-like feet. You can really tell. Look at those claws. They are definitely made for digging. You can see her smooth shell. Hi there. She's got a little bit of her food on her face. She's a messy eater. The prickly pear cactus, they like to eat the cactus pads and the flowers and the fruit. And the fruit is purple. And that's one of her favorite things. And when she eats the prickly pear cactus fruit, her whole face is purple. But she loves it. Oh, do tortoises have teeth? No, they don't have teeth. So turtles and tortoises don't have teeth. They do have just kind of a sharp jaw, and some have beaks, kind of like a bird beak. And that's how they chew up their food. And so you can kind of, I'll do an up close look there. So she just kind of chomps down her food, tears it off, and then eats it. She doesn't chew it the same way that you and I do. Some good resources. Awesome. So there's a lot of things. I know that we're going to be posting some resources for you to learn more about gopher tortoises. I know that if you go on Facebook and you go to Alabama Freshwater Wildlife and Freshwater Fisheries, they have some links to some really cool Gopher Tortoise Day activities. And I also know we're going to be sharing some things from our sister organization, Alabama Outdoor Classroom. They're putting together some good activities as well, and so we'll be sharing those with you so that you can learn more about gopher tortoise, maybe do some cool gopher tortoise activities. If you look up online Gopher Tortoise Day, you will find so many cool things so that you can learn about gopher tortoises. Oh, and I wanted to show you one more thing. I did have this poster, and this poster shows the longleaf forest, and it shows this is the eastern indigo snake. It's our longest species of snake in North America, and it relies on gopher tortoise burrows. This is the little apron. So this is where the eggs would be at the entrance to the gopher tortoise burrow. There's a little gopher tortoise frog, or gopher frog, and there's the tunnel. Goes down deep. There's a little Florida mouse, made a little side tunnel right here, and it goes down. Oh, there's an eastern diamondback rattlesnake right there. That eastern diamondback rattlesnake needs to be careful because this eastern indigo snake eats venomous snakes, so it might be coming down there for dinner. And then if we follow this tunnel along, there's our gopher tortoise friend right down here. And so this shows the habitat. We got our nice big spaced out longleaf pines. We have our little baby longleaf, And you can see its long root system that protects it from fire. That's just like this guy right here. And then all these different grasses and plants and animals and things like that. And so this is showing this ecosystem. It's a beautiful, complex ecosystem made up of a lot of unique animals, and they all tie back to fire, the longleaf pine tree, the gopher tortoise. That's really neat. Do they eat any bugs? So I don't know if they eat any bugs. I have heard, now they're mostly herbivores, so they eat mostly plants, but I have heard that they will eat roadkill if they come across it, which is gross. So dead stuff they found in the road. So that's what I've heard. Do gopher tortoises have any natural predators? Okay, so they do when they're babies. Raccoons will predate the eggs and the young, and even as adults, they can cause harm. Raccoons can, but as babies and as are you scared? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. As babies and as eggs, that's when they're most likely to be predated by something. And it could be skunks, possums, anything that could fit a gopher tortoise egg or baby in its mouth. It takes 7 years for a baby gopher tortoise's shell to harden fully. So that first 7 years is pretty tough because they're not fully protected. So just about anything that could fit them in their mouth can eat them. So that's pretty dangerous for them. All right. Any more questions for me? She's really cute, isn't she? She's just hanging out in her burrow. Why do they lay their eggs in the apron area? Seems like it would be safer in the burrow. I think it's because the burrow would be too cold. The burrow stays a nice consistent temperature, but they need the sun to heat up the front part right here. They need that to incubate. So, you think about a bird sits on eggs to keep them warm. Well, you can't really imagine her sitting on eggs. I don't think that would work out real well. But if they put it out here in the apron and they bury it under the dirt, it keeps it warm so the eggs can incubate. And they'll stay nice and warm, and they'll stay humid, the right temperature and everything. And they have to stay the right temperature because that will determine if the eggs are going to be male or female. So if it gets too warm, they will end up being female. If it ends up being too cool, they will end up being male. So they have to be the right temperature, and if they bury them under the sand right out here in the sun, it typically stays a good temperature. So, oh, she's rubbing her eye. I think she got some sand in her eye. So, but down in the burrow, year-round, is so deep underground that it stays a nice basic temperature. Nice steady temperature, steady humidity, and so it's perfect for a gopher tortoise and a lot of other animals, but not necessarily the eggs. Can tortoises swim even though they live on land? So it's not something I've tested out, but as far as I know, no, they're not swimmers. They're not designed to swim. They're very heavy, and they don't have those webbed feet, and they don't live in areas with lots of water. In fact, another fun fact, they get most of their water from what they eat. So they get most of their water from this kind of food, from grasses and chickweed and prickly pear cactus and other things like that. They don't often have to go out and seek water unless there's a drought and their plant sources have dried up. So they get most of their water there. So they don't go looking for water most of the time. They're not adapted to swim, so it's not something that they look for. I don't think that they would be very good swimmers. Although, you know, I'm sure if an accident happened, they'd try their best to get out. But I can't imagine it working out so well for them. All right, so turn this around. I'm really glad that you are all able to join in today, and this video it'll be up so that you can share it, use it however you want to. Share with your class, share with students, share with parents who might find it interesting to show to their kiddos. We miss everyone here at the Nature Center. We know everyone is staying safe at home right now, and when everything is safe again, we'll be happy to have you here at the Nature Center, and we'll be able to show you Big Mama in person. But for now, we hope that you're staying safe and well at home. And while you're being safe and well at home, we'll be showing you and sending you some things on social media. So tune in on Monday. Check out our Facebook page. We'll be posting a challenge for you, so keep us in mind. Check that out on Monday. And then next Friday at 2 o'clock, we are going to be doing another Naturalist chat on a different topic, so you have to check us out again for that. And in the meantime, you can still comment any questions that you have on here, and I will answer them the best I can about gopher tortoises, and if you have any more about that. And I hope that you enjoy Gopher Tortoise Day and look up some things about gopher tortoises, maybe some of the animals that live in gopher tortoise burrows, or all the different things that they eat, maybe even some things that you have in your yard that a gopher tortoise would like to eat. So it's things like that you can keep looking up. There's lots of different coloring pages and activity sheets and stuff like that if you look up online gopher tortoise activities, and we're going to be posting some things like that as well. So I hope you enjoyed this day, and we're going to be heading back home. Big Mama is in her home already. I'll be headed back to mine. I hope that you're all staying safe with your families at your home, and we will see you next week. Stay safe.